Hey guys, Doug B here. This week we're going to take a look at firmware 19.05, the latest firmware for the Axe FX3. Now version 19.05 had 5 additions for it. Well, like I said last week, 5 additions doesn't really sound like much, but when you think about it, the week before they had 8 additions, and the week before that they had 31 changes and additions. So again, finding 5 more in such a short space of time, just incredible. But that isn't the big news. There was one addition that had some guys literally dancing in the streets. That addition is Scene Ignore. Now there's a lot of confusion about Scene Ignore and how to use it, and we'll get to that in a minute. I'm still wrapping my head around it, so if you don't get it right away, don't feel bad. But if you do get it and think it's useful, this thing is a real game changer. All right, let's check out the changes. Number 1, added Scene Ignore to most blocks. When set to on, Scene Ignore instructs the block to ignore scene changes. Scene Ignore is a per channel parameter. This allows turning Scene Ignore to off on one or more channels, which will then allow a scene change to set the block to a desired state if the block is on that channel. At first, when you look at this, it doesn't seem that important. If anything, it seems confusing and contradictory. I don't think Fractal's initial description did them any favors. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about Scene Ignore on the Fractal forum. It seems to be a polarizing subject. Either you don't get it at all, can't figure out what it's for, or it's the next greatest thing since sliced bread. It seems to be something that's really big for the guys that are out there gigging. I'll have to confess, I haven't gigged in, more than a few years, so that's probably why this wasn't an instant win for me. Probably not going to be too many home players that get excited about this. But let's say that for gigging you have one of those kitchen sink presets with 8 scenes. There's 4 amps in your amp block, and each amp is used for 2 scenes. You're doing sound check and you find that one of your amps, say the one that's in channel A, really sounds good in this hall, and you don't really see any reason to use the amps that are in channels B, C, and D. But then you'd have to reprogram 6 of the 8 scenes in order to use channel A in the amp block. That's not going to happen, right? But now you can set Scene Ignore on channel A, and you can use the amp in channel A across all 8 scenes. I mean, every time you change scenes, it would stay on channel A. Now, Scene Ignore is channel dependent. So you could, for instance, have Scene Ignore turned on for channel A and have it turned off for channels B, C, and D. You could go into the amp block via the front panel or a foot controller and change the amp channel to B, and now Scene Ignore would be turned off for all the scenes until you hit the scene that has channel A in it. Now you can also think of Scene Ignore as a way to expand 8 scenes in a preset to 32 scenes, heck, even more, depending on how experimental you want to get with Scene Ignore. I mean, look at it this way. If you have 8 scenes in a preset, and just using the amp block alone, you have 4 amps. If you turned all of them to Scene Ignore, let's say you started with channel A, okay, you have those 8 scenes. Now, again, you've gone manually and changed to channel B. Now all the 8 scenes would be using the amp in channel B. Same with channels C and D, for a total of 32 scenes within that preset. And if you had other blocks that had Scene Ignore turned on and off, you could go in there too and expand it. So you could have definitely more than 32, but just with one block, with 4 channels in one block, 8 scenes, 4 channels, 8 times 4, 32. That is really impressive. I set up a preset to demonstrate how this can work. It has 8 scenes, and all 4 channels of the amp block are being used. Each amp channel is used in 2 scenes. You can see that when I page through the scenes. Okay, I'll turn on Scene Ignore on each amp channel. Now watch amp 1 when I switch through all the scenes. See, it stayed on amp 1, channel A for all 8. Now I've changed the amp channel to B, and watch what happens when I page through the scenes. And we can do the same thing. Let's see, go back to scene 1 and set C. We'll go through the scenes. Stays on the Plexi 50-watt jump for all 8 scenes. And just to be a completist, let's do channel D, the Friedman. So there you have it. 8 scenes for each amp channel, 4 amp channels, 4 times 8, 32. I said 32 scenes. That's just with using scene ignore in the amp channel. You can go into a lot of the other blocks and turn scene ignore on too, so that you can just keep this going. It's pretty interesting and opens up a lot of possibilities. Number 2, improved Cnfb algorithms in amp block, resulting in smoother distortion and improved clarity. This one didn't get much mention because scene ignore was a lot more popular. But for the folks that did notice it, they were very, very, very excited. It brings the Axe FX3 that much closer to rivaling real-world amp rigs. Number 3, improved preset and scene switching when input impedance changes between presets and scenes. Now this is another biggie, making preset and scene changes more and more seamless. Number 4, FC controllers. Switch ring color settings of off will now work correctly. I never noticed that it didn't work, but really there isn't too many times where you would actually want an LED on the foot controller to be off. The only time that I can think about it is if, say for instance, you have a preset that doesn't have one of the effects that are in your either effects 1 or 2 layouts. That one you don't want that to light up because you don't want to go into your effects layout and, say for instance, hit a button for a chorus, but there is no chorus in your preset. So if the LED is off, you know that effect is not part of your preset. Number 5, FC controllers. Effect channel select LED ring will properly be dim when an effect is bypassed. This was one I never noticed before because I don't have channel select switches set up on either of my effect layouts. But it sure makes sense that if an effect is bypassed, the LED for the channel change for that effect should be dim as well as the LED for that effect. I added a channel select for the phaser 1 block. And yes, when I pull up a preset that has the phaser block bypassed, the phaser channel select switch is also bypassed. It works. Well, there you have it, guys. My hands-on look at firmware 19.05. The whole scene ignore thing may still be a head scratcher for you, but it is the one feature that lots of people have been asking for years. Game changer. Like I said, it's a biggie for the guys that gig. And next Wednesday, we'll be looking at another preset of the week. Now, you don't want to miss that. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. All right, guys, see you next week.